Welcome, everybody, to building a unified digital ecosystem for scalable growth. I'm joined by three wonderful folks today, and I'm going to give you a chance to introduce them. They're going to have a chance to introduce themselves in a moment. Very quickly, this is our group today. I'm Mike Bird, guy on the left, uh, part of the business development group, the growth team at Engaging Networks. And I just get the most fun job of meeting all of these amazing nonprofits out there in the world who want to move their missions forward by increasing the supporter base that drives their mission, that deepens engagement, donation, giving, advocacy, action taking, etc. I'm joined by Jen Fraser from Firefly, Karen and Jessica from Percolator Consulting. And really quickly, I'm going to kick it over to each of those. We're going to have a conversation today about uh, how organizations can come together with their technology to make it something that's more usable for them, a better experience for their supporters. Jen, I'm going to kick it over to you, and then Karen and Jessica.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Mike and Engaging Networks team, thanks for having us here today to talk about some cool, exciting, and complicated, somewhat, topics for this audience. I'm Jen Fraser. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the CEO and founder of Firefly Partners. I'm coming to you from Boulder, Colorado today, and it is going to be a nice and toasty 95 degrees out there. So I think some of us are roasting in the summer heat wherever you are. I was just in Europe. So if you're coming from across the pond, I was also roasting in England and Spain. So I feel you all over the place. But we're excited to talk about kind of user behavior, constituent relationship, and how we can help make sense of hopefully getting your systems to be a little bit more streamlined and user friendly for all of you doing amazing work in the world and your nonprofits out there. And I'll go deeper into Firefly in just a moment.
My name is Karen Uffelman. I am the founder and one of the two partners of Percolator Consulting. We are a Salesforce consulting practice that focuses on Salesforce and all the things that integrate with Salesforce, including engaging networks. And we're excited to talk more with you about making sure that your data that's in engaging networks also makes its way back into Salesforce. Uh, and we'll talk more about that soon.
And hello, my name's Jessica Townsend. I'm the Client Success Manager at Percolator Consulting. I manage our retainer program, which provides ongoing support to organizations who have already set up their Salesforce instance and they're looking for help with troubleshooting any issues, making small changes, training their staff on how to use their system. And sometimes in cases like this, setting up integrations for tools that you are using that are Salesforce adjacent. And I'm also excited to be here speaking with you all today.
Lovely. Thank you all. We have a poll that we wanted to put out to our group just to kick things off and get a better handle on where folks who are joining us today might be at. We're going to launch that in just a moment, but it's a quick question to see where are you at in your Salesforce journey, if at all. And let me just make sure. I believe, there we go. You should be able to see that now. Maybe you're a Salesforce user. Maybe you are about to be a Salesforce user. Maybe you use another CRM completely, but you're curious to know how integrated data can be of use to your organization. Um, Definitely very intrigued to see where the folks here land. And I'll leave that open for another moment before I end it. Um, we are going to do this, by the way, from a housekeeping standpoint in two ways. Use the chat channel, which is open. Feel free to engage if you want to leave a comment, if you want to reach out to somebody who left a comment and do a little bit of webinar networking. I totally encourage that. If you have a question for our group that you want us to answer, there is a Q&A tab that's open, and we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the webinar. But if there is a question that comes in that is pertinent to a specific segment that we're in right now, and both Jen and Karen and Jessica are going to have different segments today, then I will loop those questions in if I can. All right, I'm going to end this poll really quickly. We are kind of spread evenly across being new to Salesforce, being a longtime Salesforce user or being on another CRM, and maybe you're thinking about considering a move to Salesforce one day. Um, that's the results if you didn't see them before. Let's get into this. This whole conversation came about as a result of uh, an observation, really, that I had from about a dozen or so different conversations with organizations who are Salesforce users and have, on the surface, kind of a similar digital tech stack. They have usually one or two specific fundraising platforms that are out there in the market. They have two, maybe one of two or three email platforms. There are a variety of different SMS platforms out there that folks are using, I've noticed. And then when it comes to things like advocacy events, whether that's for free or ticketed, paid ticket events, or things like survey tools, all of these things are sitting around Salesforce. None of them really talk to each other. They're all tied in different ways to the CRM. And this is causing sort of a consistent set of challenges for these organizations. And so I thought, okay, this can't be a coincidence. Let's see if there are folks who want to dive into this a little bit more. So Jen, Karen, and Jessica are all great experts in this, and they're going to add a whole lot of great color to this. This is sort of more context. So another trend here that was spotted is that a lot of these organizations that I was talking to are about the same size in terms of their revenue. And what's happened in a lot of cases is the supporter base has grown either over time or maybe more suddenly, more recently, out of things like an advocacy spike that has driven list size. There are lots of things to be advocating for in the world today, and that has been able to build a lot of people's supporter bases. And what's happened is that the number of people on an email list in an organization is now suddenly really quickly outpacing the folks on the team who can actually go about engaging all of these people and managing the increasing amount of data that they're taking in from these big audiences. So as time is being dedicated to maybe fixing syncs, making sure that data, if it's being transferred over manually between systems, making sure that that is done, it's costing teams a lot of time. It's costing a lot of, I want to say Advil, it's creating a lot of headaches. And what you're also seeing as a result of it in these organizations is inconsistency in the data, not knowing here, this concept of data drift. Where is the data actually truthful? Where can we believe in it? And of course, if we can't trust our data, then we're less likely to use it and then just go off of gut all of the time. And then this impacts action making in terms of actually segmenting a group to be able to engage a group of supporters in a way that's most relevant, most personalized, most fun sometimes to them. And we're going to talk a bit about how, by integrating digital tools more, we can fix the broken segmentation issue so that it goes from a situation like you saw with all tools sort of pointed down to Salesforce. If we can put those tools on a single database and run that on a single integration back to Salesforce, that we can actually clean up a lot of these challenges. Mm. So with that said, Jen, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. You can just go to the next slide. Essentially, just 5 seconds about Firefly. We've been working with engaging networks since the beginning of time. It feels like I met Graham, the founder, I think, somewhere in the mid 2000 aughts. And we've been a partner for many years. We've been doing, I don't even know, I've lost count of how many migrations we've done, and then just continuing to help support engaging networks clients for many, many years. But we work across a lot of platforms. We're platform agnostic as an agency, but we really focus on trying to ensure that organizations think about sort of the best match between their internal needs and the functionality and the tools out there in the space. So we're not always, we love engaging networks, our friends, but we do want to make sure that folks are trying to find the best set of tools to sort of meet their organizational needs. But I echo a lot of what Mike just said, when the tech stack starts to spiral out of control, we'll talk about a little bit the drowning in tools. We have a lot of empathy in for that situation, especially as you get into large organizations when different departments kind of have their own initiatives and things like that. We'll talk about how it can happen, but that's when you want to kind of look at sort of like you get kind of a little bit lost in the forest. You can't find your way out again, or can't find your way to good data and good internal organizational structure. So we really try to think about and we ground our projects in sort of the strategy and sort of like, what are you organizationally trying to do? And let's try and help you find the right technology solution and set it up and optimize the various tools you're using to make sure that you're getting the right outcomes for your organization. But it's definitely, our focus is on the digital tools, the digital engagement. We understand that the number one thing you're doing in your organization is trying to grow that supporter base. It's like the most critical thing you're doing, and building relationships. So we want to make sure that the tools are working well, not getting in your way, and you're spending less time sort of fighting with tools and getting more time back on your day to focus back on both the work that you're doing and then the engagement with those supporters that are there to help support the work you're doing. So we kind of go through, this is kind of a little overview of sort of the things we do, but that's at a high level. We've been doing this since about 2007, 2008. So quick math, we're coming up on our 20-year anniversary. Shocking. I know. I'm really like, oh, dang, that's coming soon. We need to like do a logo treatment. It's going to be amazing. So 2027 is going to be 20 years for us. So next slide. So as Mike and I have been talking a lot about working together with potential clients, either existing Engaging Networks clients or potential. We have a kind of a 3-tier kind of way we look at stuff. It's the people and the process and the technology, and you can't really divorce one from the other. And a lot of times, more emphasis is put on sort of the tech, and I know a lot of emphasis is like, we need to find the right tool. We need to find the right platform. We need to look at the right functionality. We need to have, the tool somehow are going to be the nirvana and it's going to solve all of our problems. But even though you are doing things like, maybe the current tech stack that you're in is creating a lot of manual work for you, or these things, and you think, gosh, again, if I could just get to the right tool, we can integrate that, and then it'll solve, that pain point will go away, and we can find these other tools and the integrations will happen. These things will help us get to this sort of nirvana of like, all the data will show up, it'll all be great, and all these things. So, spoiler alert, while we are here talking about the benefits of getting to a consolidated platform, that alone isn't going to solve all the problems in terms of like how you as an organization are then even using a more integrated suite of tools. So we really actually spend a lot of time focusing on the people that are using the tools and the processes built around the platform. So you can have a really great integrated platform that has everything in one place. It has common nomenclature. Everybody gets trained on it in different ways, but it's really still about the a lot of times the teams behind the scenes and that are running these tools, where you need to spend some more of your time. So we tend to do this holistic view of what's going on inside the organization, both from mostly from the people side, because we want to make sure you get to the right tools, but we want to make sure your people are trained. So we really look at that as a foundational starting point of who's using it, what are the goals, how are they going to be interacting with a platform. And that's when you find a big organization has gotten into these silos, because they really, they go a little too far on that, where they go, well, this team member, they're going to be using these tools, so it's fine if they're over here in a silo, and if these folks have these particular needs, so it's okay if they're using this tool. But the goal is to also then bring it all back together. So you're like, okay, great. We do want to work on individual team members and making sure everybody is trained and using tools that are going to meet their specific needs. But if they're off in their own little silos, that creates all sorts of problems with inside the organization. So we want to make sure we're looking at all 3 pieces of the legs of the stool, if you will, and making sure they're all working well together. So next slide. So we want to, like Mike said, this is a little bit of a reiteration of sort of like what problems we see. The disconnected systems and siloed data obviously creates if anybody of you are out there in this space, you already are way more familiar with this, and I don't need to reiterate some of these the high level issues that we see when organizations show up with sort of a disconnected tech stack. There are definitely folks who are in these schools of thought of saying, I want a point solution that is going to be the best of breed for that particular piece of my kind of user journey. I want the best email. I want the best marketing automation. I want the best advocacy platform. I want the best this and that. And there is an argument there to be made out in the world for those types of things. And I think that is totally fine. And I think, again, this is about, again, finding where your team is, making sure that your tech stack is meeting the sort of the savviness and the bandwidth and the capacity and things like that of your team as well. But ultimately, like I said, when you get to have too many tools, some of this becomes like your day-to-day work is actually sort of like fighting with tools or moving data manually or doing these things, and you get away from the work of the organization. And we want to make sure that you're balancing the benefits of sort of maybe something you found to be like the best of breed in one particular area with some of the challenges that come with managing a disparate tech stack. So this is not like a one size fits all. We are not here to say everybody needs to move to a unified platform and it's going to be the best solution for everybody. But we want to make sure we're able to come in and help make sure we analyze and look at what's going on inside your organization to say, are you sort of checking the boxes of a lot of these pain points? And if you kind of, is that tipping the scale of saying, you know what, I think it's time for us to really think about some of these benefits of moving to a more integrated platform. This is really a burden on our team. We've got disconnected systems that are causing really the organization on a whole to suffer a bit more from lack of consistent data, lack of knowledge, lack of being able to like have teams talk across departments and say, great, like, I don't know what you're talking about. You use a different tool than I do. Your nomenclature is totally different than mine. We, run into these problems all the time where teams can't coordinate and collaborate well inside, the organization. You're working then against yourself, so like you want to make sure that you're not getting lost between the idea of like the best solution out there in a particular area of your tech stack is getting in the way of your organization, really benefiting from potentially reducing some of those barriers to get through and being able to get more information out, better trusted data, and being able to collaborate between team members. You can't kind of overstate the importance of these pieces of it. So these are some of the things, again, that we notice. Mike kind of alluded to these as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, coming through, you can go to the next one. We approach it, like I said, we really want to think about your user journeys, your staff capacity. We look at the people and the processes and the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and making sure that your tech stack really matches all of those things. So we don't want to go like, you must move, but we want to make sure that this is the right fit for you. And it's going to be a situation that helps you reduce a lot of these barriers or challenges and helps you focus on the work at hand and not, grappling with tools all day long, which I've talked to far too many people over the years that's end up being like the majority of their work week is just fighting with platforms. We don't want that. So platform decisions should be driven by the people and the processes internally. And again, the outcomes you're trying to strive to achieve. And we want to make sure reducing friction is the number one goal, increasing collaboration. And we find that we love the opportunities that exist within a unified tech stack. I'm a big fan. I think we've watched the pendulum swing, a couple different ways over the last 20 years, like when it's like, oh, point solutions are the way to go, unify, blah, blah, blah. I think you guys, again, you just have to find the right solution that works well for your organization. I do not think there's a one size fits all. So we really focus on that. So I think the next slide talks about how the Firefly percolator relationship works really well, where we really focus on the digital side of the integration and say, great, we're here to help you, if you've decided that a move to Engaging Networks is a great fit for you, we would be an implementation partner. Go through, again, we do a lot about, again, the people and the processes to make sure that the system is configured appropriately to meet your various team members. We like to do a lot of training because really at the end of the day, this is a lot of change management and making sure that each seat is really well equipped to use, again, even if you had been in those individual tech stacks, but right now we want to make sure if you're making that move, you don't just get a generic one size fits all training either. You're really thinking about individualized roles within the organization, and you're getting training to help make sure that it works well for you in your seat, because it's a really awesome, robust, complex piece of software that it can be very tailored for different use cases inside your organization, depending on your role and your seat. So we want to make sure that we're really addressing how everybody in the organization is going to use the system most effectively for your seat. But the beauty is you then have common language and you have common understanding of how your seat really easily ties into the next step and sort of like the user journey. You all have shared language, you all have a common understanding, you have common reporting and analytics, lots of benefits that can come from moving to this sort of more unified tech stack. So we handle that side, and we like to look to our friends at Percolator to be our data experts. And so I just want to make sure that the understanding of how the Firefly side and the Percolator side work in tandem and in partnership as you think about a migration into this new unified tech stack. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to let Karen and Jessica take over talking about the CRM. Obviously, again, happy to answer questions. I'm excited to hear more about the nerdy data integration side of things that thankfully other folks handle and I don't.
Thanks, Jen. And
Yeah.
before I hand off to Karen and Jessica, that was very helpful. And I want to just double click on one thing you said, which is that yes, I'm putting my hand up. I'm biased. I represent an integrated platform,
Right.
but I also see lots of folks out there who make great use of what you talked about, which I call a hybrid platform, where it's like, hey, we
Mm-hmm.
really like this one best in breed tool for this one function. This we don't want to lose it. But how much can we tie everything else together
Right.
around that? That is still a very effective way to use an integrated platform. And we have many clients that use EN in that exact way. So I believe I wrote an article actually about that. You can either go point solution, full integrated, or hybrid.
I
Maybe we
like
can
it.
get that out as as a bit of a resource afterward. But Karen and Jessica, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, we're happy to take on the nerdy side of this presentation. Um, so Percolator is actually, yeah, you can say that, that's fine. Percolator is a Salesforce shop primarily, but we work with everything that integrates with Salesforce. So engaging networks is part of our practice as well, along with lots of other tools and apps like Firefly. We are platform agnostic outside of Salesforce, and we're really trying to look for the best solution for our clients. Uh, and we start with a roadmap. We do technology roadmaps for many of our clients, especially those who are thinking about moving to Salesforce or have been using Salesforce for a long time and feel like their tech stack needs some big overhaul. We can step in, we do a technology roadmap, we figure out what are the platforms and tools that'll work best for your organization. Because of the strength of the Engaging Network connector, Engaging Networks can be a good solution to walk hand in hand with Salesforce. And we have been doing a lot of integrations recently, partnering with folks like Firefly who stand up Engaging Networks, and then we come in and we make sure that all the plumbing works the way that it should so that the data is where you need it to be. Um, you want to be able to see your advocacy alongside with volunteer engagement or financial commitments. You want to be able to report easily on everything that matters. Most of our clients want to do that in Salesforce, and so you want to make sure that the integration is set up correctly. We partner with organizations like Alliance for the Great Lakes, Ed Trust, Drug Policy Alliance to deliver these sophisticated tech stacks that actually allow organizations to engage across the board with their constituents and have all that data in one place at the end of the day. I'm going to pass it over to you, Jessica, if you want to talk some more about why integration matters.
Absolutely. So there are a few things that are reasons why the integration is really important and really useful. And so, as has been mentioned before, constituent insights, the ability to look at the data for the people who are engaging with your organization, across all the different ways in which they engage. Oftentimes, organizations really care deeply about not just what their constituents are doing, but the exact ways in which they're engaging. And it can be really difficult to get a complete look at that data when you're trying to compare and match the data across different systems. And so having that complete picture of donor information, volunteer, and activism all in one place, that can be really, really useful. The other thing that is really helpful is reporting. Many organizations use reporting in order to understand what their constituents are doing. And it's one thing to be able to see the data in your system. For instance, something like, how many people attended a specific event or how many donations you received in the past year. But it's another thing to be able to answer important questions using that data. So oftentimes what I see is people asking questions like, how many of our constituents volunteered and donated this past year? Or how many of our constituents donated more than $100 but have never completed an advocacy action? And so these types of questions are a lot easier and quicker to answer when all of your data lives in a single place. And of course, we can't forget about the efficiency side of it because that is very time consuming when you have to download information from a system and then upload it to another system in order to get all the data in one place. And I've seen people do this all the time where if they are using Salesforce or a CRM, they may download a CSV file or an Excel file from their marketing tool or their donation tool and then use that file to create records in Salesforce so that, or in their CRM to get all the information in one place. And not only is it time consuming, but it can be a little bit error prone. And also, one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people don't have time to do this consistently. And so you may have large gaps of time between the uploads, which means that you are missing data in your system and you're not able to run reports on the latest information because it simply hasn't been uploaded yet. And so with the integration, you can have the data that you want, where you want it, when you need it, which is really handy. So we can go to the next slide. And on this page, I put an example of how something like this can look in Salesforce. So as you can see, there are several columns here. The first few columns are, people's names, but then across there you have information like what was your first gift date, your total gifts, the events, petitions, emails, your volunteer information, and even personal preferences about your communication. And so information like this, the reason why I wanted to show this is because it's not just a list of people who attended an event or a list of donations, but what you're seeing on this is aggregate data where the information is being analyzed for each individual person so that you can answer those types of questions where you can look at somebody's first gift date in comparison to how many emails they've opened recently or what volunteer skills that they have, which is really handy. We can go to the next slide. All right, so the power of the connector. So there's a couple things that I wanted to point out about this connector that make it really useful. One thing I wanted to talk about is the create and update function. So the neat thing about the Engaging Networks connector is that you can choose when to update a record in Salesforce versus when to create a record. So the sync allows you to define criteria that can be used to identify existing records, like contact records, and update those records without creating a new one just because a new record appears within Engaging Networks. And I know that a lot of folks who work with Salesforce and probably other CRMs may struggle with duplicate records where the same person's being created multiple times or the same record's being created multiple times to represent the same information. And so the fact that the connector has the ability to look for an existing record in addition to creating a new one is really great so that you don't have all of these multiples of records representing the exact same information over and over again. The other thing that's really neat about engaging networks is that it works with lots of different types of objects in Salesforce. So it can create a lot of the objects that are standard in most people's Salesforce instances, like campaign members and opportunities. But a lot of folks use custom objects that are specific to certain packages in Salesforce or other custom objects that they've created on their own. And you can also use the Engaging Networks connector to create records for those objects. So some people use things like affiliations, which represent the place where a constituent works. It represents the relationship between them and their workplace. And so you can use Engaging Networks to create affiliations if you want, or some people use a tool called engagement plans, which help to map out the next steps when you are. Let's see here. It looks like Mike, you raised your hand. I don't know if you meant to or not. Did you want to? Oh, okay,
I did
great.
not. Sorry.
I want to make sure I didn't
Misclick
miss
on mine.
you.
There we
Did
go.
you want to say something? But yeah, so you have campaign members and opportunities, which are standard, but you also have engagement plans, which help people map out their next steps when thinking about how to engage with their donors. And so you could use the sync to create those automatically as well. You can go to the next slide. So this is a screenshot of one of the pages that you will see if you use the Engaging Networks to Salesforce connector. And what you'll notice here is that on the left-hand side, you have the supporter fields, which is the information that lives in Engaging Networks. On the right-hand side, you have the fields that are in Salesforce. And in the middle, you have the sync direction. And right now, they're all listed as both, which means that the data flows from one side to another. So if there's an update on the Salesforce side, it goes to Engaging Networks and vice versa. But you can also make it so that the data only flows in one direction, either from Salesforce to Engaging Networks or the other way. And so you have all that control for that contact data. And you can go to the next slide.
Which is really cool if you're an integration nerd.
So let's talk a little bit more about the sync and how exactly it works. So the first thing I wanted to mention with the platform sync is that it will push all of your transaction information to Salesforce. And when it does that, it creates the records in Salesforce that you want to have created to represent those transactions. So if a donation happens in Engaging Networks, an opportunity gets created in Salesforce. If somebody completes an advocacy action in Engaging Networks, a campaign member is created in Salesforce. And so that's essentially how the sync moves the data so that you can tell on the Salesforce side what has happened in Engaging Networks. And the sync is bidirectional for the contact data. So as I was just showing on the previous screen, any sort of personal information that somebody might provide, like their address or their phone number, at the time that they complete an action in Engaging Networks, like at the time that they make a donation, that information will be pushed onto the contact record in Salesforce. And similarly, if you as a staff member go into Salesforce or your CRM and you update that data in Salesforce, then the sync will go ahead and push that data back to Engaging Networks for you without you having to manually go into both systems and make the changes at the same time to make sure that the changes are reflected in both places. And the nice thing about that sync from the Salesforce side is that you can even push some of that aggregate field data from Salesforce to Engaging Networks. So those fields that I was showing, like the first gift date, or some people have things like total gifts or total gifts this year that they already have as fields in Salesforce, you can push that information to Engaging Networks if you find it useful to have it there, which is really nice. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is the exclusion rules. So Engaging Networks has a nice feature that allows you to control which of the contacts are coming over from Salesforce to Engaging Networks. And that has proven to be really useful because some of the organizations that we work with, they don't necessarily want all of their contacts from Salesforce entering Engaging Networks. What they want is for only a subset of their contacts. So maybe people who have already completed an action in Engaging Networks, or maybe just people who are currently donors. Maybe those are the only people that they want syncing over. And so by having this exclusion rule, we have the ability to control which contacts come over to engaging networks from Salesforce, and you kind of have that choice available to you, which is nice. And you can go to the next slide. And this is just that example of the settings page in the Engaging Network sync. So before we looked at the contact sync and the data moving back and forth for contacts, but this is the page that controls the sync for kind of all of the fuller information. And so what I've highlighted here are the sync contact data to Salesforce, which controls the information going from Engaging Networks to Salesforce. And then I've highlighted sync contact data from Salesforce, which shows which controls when the data comes from Salesforce to Engaging Networks. And you can see that that exclude filter is there, and you can put whatever you want as your criteria for the exclude. And so you can see how those controls are separate, and you can make your own decisions about what data you want passing back and forth, which is really handy. Next slide. And I'll pass this back to Karen.
So that was all cool, right? Uh, I would say that not all integrations are created equal, and there are lots of apps and tools and platforms out in the world that advertise that they have a Salesforce integration or an integration with another CRM, and those integrations may or may not work well. They might be brittle. Uh, there might be lots of issues once you set them up. One of our roles as consultants is to help clients determine which um, tools that they might choose that have good integrations. And when we are evaluating tools for our clients, we look at how well the tool meets the needs of the client, and then how well does it integrate with their primary CRM. The Engaging Networks connector works really well. And you saw how sophisticated it was in some of the slides that Jessica just described. Uh, so it's a sophisticated app with a sophisticated connector. And because of all that extensive functionality and all the ways that you can adjust the integration, it takes some expertise to set it up. If you are not familiar with duplicate roles, duplicate rules, Salesforce flows, or sandboxes, we don't recommend attempting to set this up without a partner like us. Um, but if you do have some in-house expertise, if you're a bigger organization with an in-house IT department, this is something that you can set up. Um, if you don't feel confident, though, we do recommend getting some help like us to tackle an integration. Next slide, please.
I'll add really quickly that even some of the largest clients we have still go outside for some help because it does have a robustness to it where someone who has seen it before and has seen engaging networks before can add a lot of value to the stand-up of the connector.
Mhm. Yeah, so sorry, I was really intrigued by Mike's comment. Um, you, as a client, as a nonprofit organization, you're expert on your programmatic needs. You know what your program needs. You know how the integration, like what you need the integration to do for you. And we are experts on how the integration works. So we can provide that tight plumbing and make sure that by the time you're launching Engaging Networks, you have a unified digital ecosystem where all the data shows up where you need it to. Or if you're starting with Salesforce and Engaging Networks and you're already using both and you're trying to manage that manual integration back and forth, we can help stitch those two things together so that all of that extra work you're doing to either look at data in two places or manual uploads back and forth is a thing of the past. Next slide, please. So we have a very structured process that Jessica designed of how we approach the integration. It takes 6 to 8 weeks, and we can work in parallel with Firefly or with another partner who's setting up engaging networks for you. We talk to you about your program needs. We translate those into technical tasks, and then we are able to set up and deploy in production. We test in production with you so that as you're getting trained on using engaging networks by a partner like Jen, we are also training you on how the integration works, and your participation in the testing helps you really understand how your system works. And then we provide additional training and launch support at the end of that process. And it's tight, and we have a lot of experience with it and works really well.
Yes, I can attest it is a pretty well-oiled machine, and I think helpful for a lot of folks who might be thinking, wow, this is a lot of integration work. Someone show me a plan. And I think having that guidance from you all is really helpful for those groups. We've seen evidence of their support for that work. Um, I wanted to kind of bridge the gap here between Jen's comments earlier about getting the right tool in place for the people that you have, and she makes a great comment about how each seat within engaging networks, the role that you might have within an organization might mean that your reality within engaging networks looks a little bit different. Um, but then let's talk about what that can actually look like when it's all working together across a group of staff members. And then I can also talk a little bit about how all of this data can also be leveraged further with the Salesforce piece involved coming off of what Karen and Jessica just shared. So normally we often, and this is going to be quick, and oftentimes in an engaging networks demo, we show a lot of front end examples. We show what's possible to build. It's a very customizable front end, but I really want to focus here on what data does on the back end for the day-to-day user from an organization so that they're able to engage people more easily in more fun and creative ways, in ways that create more growth. We've talked about these themes already: unifying tools, reducing friction, and oftentimes decreasing financial and non-financial costs when it comes to all of the digital tools that an organization could use. And then what happens when we get to more of a single source of truth, how we can get to a very granular level of supporter specific journeys, and you'll see what that looks like as well. And reporting, which most of our clients do fundamentally, if they're a Salesforce organization, are doing in Salesforce. How do we support that from a digital layer? We've talked a bit about this. So this is what it actually looks like in engaging networks. The idea of having all of these different transaction types. And when we say transaction, it's not necessarily a financial transaction. It could be an advocacy action, event sign up, etc. All of those things can live on a single supporter record. My colleague John obviously demos off of it himself a lot of the time, but that is, I can show you a full screen of all the transaction rows here, but I didn't want to overwhelm. This is to give you a sense as to just how broad the data set can be. And with a unified data set coming across different tools into one database, being able to build segments like this one here, where there is a specific survey response that's married to an exported segment from Salesforce, which we support through the connector, matched with the fundraising data, which is coming through engaging networks. And we can also support offline gift data as well in this segmentation. Being able to do that without having to pull different lists or looking at different sync rates and making sure that, oh, at this time on this day, that's when we can pull the right segment. All of that can happen instantly and can be updated as campaigns are going. For example, through like a Giving Tuesday sequence, if you've got 12 emails set up for a few days of fundraising, and someone gives early on in that sequence, you can actually exclude people like that as they make a gift so that they're not getting emails 2 through 12, which is not a great experience. Or as another example here, being able to combine advocacy data. We support different kinds of advocacy actions, but also maybe someone attended a webinar that your colleague Camille runs as a series. let's marry that to our audience on our email list who is most engaged when we look at who is clicking through or taking actions on pages through emails. That is another way that you could be thinking about how to look at a very specific audience and have them do a very specific thing. These segments can also be the triggers for what we call email marketing automations or SMS marketing automations, where again, integrated channels, so we could have email and SMS working together on this kind of a journey. But as someone comes into a particular point in the journey map that you have built out, you can run them through this very cool, I call it like a bowl of spaghetti, where they're experiencing something that is in relation to how they are engaging with the organization. Let's say there is a gift that is made, or someone goes from a one-time to a monthly donor. That fundraising data, again, being in one place means that we can then move them over to a new journey that you've built out, and you can do split testing on if you'd like, that is all happening on its own in a very automated way. That is the real power of the integrated platform. From a page building standpoint, so talking about like how do we understand a singular tool, there are a lot of different ways that engaging networks can be built out to support different actions. But the fundamentals of building pages is the same, and the power of having all of these pages in the same platform is actually the ability to have them play off of each other. So if I signed a petition that you published, and instead of pointing me to a thank you page, you marry me to a donation page, an opportunity to actually give financially in the moment that I took an advocacy action, we may be maximizing our chances of actually converting that person from an activist to a donor. Or let's say, for example, I attended an event, or I signed up for an event, or I took an action where I emailed a legislator. And following that, I wanted to receive a survey so that the organization, your team, has a greater understanding of what my interests might be. How do I want to be engaged with? And all of that can inform what we call opt-in questions, basically more segmentation. So all of those things make the actual day-to-day usage of the platform easier when you're learning sort of one system of building pages, but it's the data also being able to feed from one page to the next that really creates some really cool possibilities. Reporting, I am not going to try and sort of supersede what Karen and Jessica were saying, because I really do think that larger organizations, by and large, should be focusing a lot of their reporting out of Salesforce, where you can build custom dashboards. You can be adding in data that lives in a broader Salesforce instance and isn't just living within a digital ECRM like Engaging Networks. But let's say you're a part of the digital team and you just want to get into a really customizable report builder that looks at some of the things that you've been doing recently on the digital side. This is a very, very powerful tool to build specific reports with all of the different data points that we have transaction rows for, that then come together based off of how you want that data to be displayed and exported in CSV files. We're gonna go into Q&A here in just a moment. Before we do that, I did want to point out the fact that we have some resources available from each one of our teams. If you want to check out Engaging Networks, there is our QR code. Jen, feel free to add some context to this, but you've created a really cool resource. And I also know that there's a case study, I believe, Karen and Jessica, that you've created. Jen, do you want to add any context here to what you've got on the other side of this QR code?
Well, right now we've got just a teaser. We didn't get, I'll tease out that we have in progress right now. We're building out a little like self-assessment survey interactive tool. And it took a little longer for us to kind of get it all sorted. So that's coming in the follow-up email. That's going to come out in a couple of days. But this QR code right now does link at least to a little bit more sort of like, here's how we approach these projects with folks. We want to schedule times and we want to actually kind of get into, again, like I said in my kind of comments, was like, we want to help each organization analyze the various parts of our little process of like your data, your teams, your reporting analytics, your tools, and make sure that we're really diagnosing each of those areas specifically to help us assess like what the right path forward is for your organization. Again, we like whether it's hybrid, it's all point solution, or it's a full move to engaging networks completely. We want to help make sure that that's happening. So that's what's happening here. And then there coming soon will be this like interactive self-assessment that you can use with your teams to go deeper. And if you haven't done things like a full tech stack audit of your entire organization, sometimes that alone is an eye opener for people to be like, oh my God, I had no idea we were using this many tools. I've had those light bulb moments with countless clients where they don't even know all the tools that they're using until they go asking into every single department. So those are the kinds of things where we're trying to put together sort of a DIY prep that you can do on your own that helps you almost go, oh gosh, there are some hidden challenges that maybe we weren't actually fully cognizant of. So that's sort of going to happen in the follow-up email. But this is just a way to sort of learn a little bit more and schedule a call so we can kind of help you start thinking through some of the different pieces that would go into that process.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, Karen, Jessica, anything you'd add to what's on the other side of your QR code?
Yeah, we have a case study of a project that we did with Alliance for the Great Lakes, where they were using engaging networks for advocacy solution. And we set up the connector so that all of their advocacy data was flowing into Salesforce and could trigger flows for other follow-up actions or reporting. And it made a big difference for Alliance for the Great Lakes. It's a great solution for them. And we talked about the process.
That's awesome. I know you also publish a really nifty guide to the advocacy platforms that are out there. Um, and that's a really good resource for folks who are in that part of the digital space and want to get a better handle of what's out there. I find it's a really nice, thorough, and objective take on the market. So appreciate
Yeah,
that.
you can find it in the resources on our website.
Love that. I'm going to run us back for a second here. So Q&A. I've lost my ability to actually click backwards. Oh no. Um, there we go. We have a question already, and we have a few minutes to take more questions. Ted has asked our group, we may have answered this, should it be possible to view gift data that flows into Salesforce in your engaging networks instance um, in EN reports or such? For example, if an org flows direct mail and offline donations into Salesforce, or is it contact info only that flows back to engaging networks? Okay, thanks for writing that. I think I understood that to mean like, should offline gifts that are registered primarily in Salesforce be shown back into engaging networks? Um, and my understanding is yes, we do support that, and it allows us to add that into whether you're doing it as an external CRM segment or the GIFs are being sent through our bulk import API, which I believe our connector is supporting for Salesforce. That's going to write in offline gift transaction rows to supporter records. But I will maybe just be fact checked. Karen, Jessica, is there anything you would add to this question?
Jessica, I'm going to pass that to you.
Yeah, so I've seen people import historical transactions at the time that they transition. I haven't seen people as much try to push, kind of consistently push in ongoing donations into engaging networks. Typically, they will just move it in one direction from engaging networks to Salesforce. And then if they have any offline donations, that will be something that they will report on alongside the engaging networks with integrate alongside the engaging networks information within Salesforce. And that's really what we recommend doing just because it's great to have a single place where you're looking at all that information.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of out of the box, the way that we typically set it up is the contact data flows back and forth, and then the transaction data, which is your donations and your advocacy actions and everything, go from engaging networks to Salesforce. And typically the only time that you'd be putting in any sort of additional data into engaging networks would be at the time that you are transitioning to the tool from any other tool. And then going forward, the data should move in one direction
Mhm.
for the transaction data specifically, not the contact data. That goes back and forth.
Thanks for adding that context. And yeah, I do see that approach taken quite often where it's like, let's just keep everything as centralized as it can be in Salesforce. Um, and then, yeah, if you have to bring in offline data, migration is an obvious point where it makes a whole lot of sense. But if there is some kind of a campaign where you want offline gifts to influence segmentation, then that's possible.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, we could flow it the other way. We just want to talk to you specifically about what your needs were for that. Like if you were trying to make sure that a gift string was appropriate based on a donor's past giving history, we could talk about what your needs were there.
Great question, Ted. We still have a couple more minutes, and if folks want to add any more questions in, I have a quick question that I'll pose, which is as you're working, so this is a question for Karen and Jessica, as you're working with folks through the 6 to 8 week sprint to get the connector going, what are some of the things that you kind of coach people on so that they are prepared to make the greatest use of that time?
Absolutely. So I kind of have a whole list of questions that I pose to people to help them prepare for the project or prepare for the transition. And sometimes if you're interested in seeing that in advance, we could send it to you in advance if you want to be thinking about this information. But there's a lot of little details that we want people to keep in mind when we're thinking about setting up the sync because we have to map all of the data. So some of the things that we ask people are things like when it comes to donations, if a donation is successful, what opportunity stage do you want to be assigned to that? If a donation is not successful, do you want, what stage do you want to be assigned to that? Or what are the different fields that you want to be populated on a contact record when the data is syncing back and forth. And so I really encourage people to think about all of the details of your day-to-day workflow. What records are you looking at in Salesforce that you want to make sure are still there when you begin to use engaging networks? And what fields on all of those records are you looking to populate or to ensure continue to be populated? And what values do you want those fields to have? Because those are all the things that really come into play when we are setting up the sync. And the other thing that I like people to think about are things like contact matching, because Engaging Networks has a couple of different options for contact matching. And so when you think about what you would want to be considered an existing contact, what information do you want to use to find an existing contact? Typically, people will use first name, last name, email address, and that's typically a great option to use, but other people may have other specific needs. And so you would really want to think about that. And then the other thing I also have people think about are any post-processing needs. So the connector will push the data from engaging networks to Salesforce. But then once that happens, you may have additional things that you want to have happen after the fact. Like, do you want somebody to receive emails whenever a donation over a certain amount is received? Or do you want a task to be created when somebody completes an advocacy action on a certain page? And so those are the types of things where you might want us to set something up in addition that is not necessarily a part of the actual sync settings, but it's a part of your workflow for your organization. And you want to make sure that all those things are happening when the data comes in from engaging networks. So those are just a few things that I ask people to think about.
I love that.
And for client time, it's typically a couple of design sessions at the beginning of our integration process, and then some participation in testing throughout. Uh, but we try to be really thoughtful about your time and make sure that we're using it as efficiently as possible.
I know that's much appreciated. Speaking of time, we are right at time. I hope this has been, I'd be curious to poll our group here. Was this like nerdy enough? Was this too nerdy? Could we have been even more nerdy? But this is a very granular topic, but an important one for larger organizations that are just sitting on mountains of data and are kind of getting overwhelmed by it. This can sort through and save a lot of time and headaches. So I do encourage you, if you have questions, either about the strategy of building a more integrated ecosystem, feel free to reach out to Jen. Feel free to reach out to Karen, Jessica, if you want to talk more, even more nerdy Salesforce stuff. As you can see, this is kind of what they eat, sleep, breathe, and do. And if you had questions about some of the things that I mentioned off to the side about engaging networks, what does that actually look like on the front end as well? We have a lot of amazing clients who have built really incredible supporter experiences. And I'm happy to share a little bit about what those are like, if that is at the very least a source of inspiration for you. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Uh, Follow-up email will come as Steve Brown put in the chat. We will get you some links and hope you have a great rest of your day and week. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye all.
you.